accompanied the general as he laid down his armor to live a farmer's life. 3 years later, the crown princess wept before our thatched hut, lamenting, "That woman caused the death of my son, yet he wants to make her a consort. Brother Rin, what am I to do?" Her eyes welled with tears, the picture of helplessness. My husband set down his hoe, careful not to soil her with the mud. He said with a sigh of resignation, "You know I can never bear to see you cry." He retrieved his dust-covered armor and left for the capital with her. He left me with only 2 words, "Wait for me." I sold our chickens and ducks and gave the pelts from his hunts to our neighbor. "If he returns," I said, "tell him a lion is dead. Such a fine deerskin, perfect for a short coat. Are you sure you don't want it?" Auntie Wang asked, her tone full of regret on my behalf. I smiled. "The books say the South is hot and humid. I'll have no use for it." She took it, then filled a basket to the brim with freshly steamed vegetable buns for me. "They're not worth much," she urged, "but keep them for the road." I didn't refuse. As she saw me off, she hesitated. "I remember your husband headed north when he left. Why are you going south? Surely you haven't misremembered." "There's no mistake," I said. Auntie Wang's eyes widened. "You two have always been so devoted. He'll be worried sick when he comes back and finds you gone." Would Zhao Rin worry? Once I would have thought so, now I wasn't so sure. In the past half-month, he had been angry more times than in the previous 3 years combined. He would either blame me for neglecting our delicate guest, or accuse me of being petty and holding grudges. Zhao Rin told me to wait for him, but he left in such a hurry, he never heard my answer. I thought for a moment, then said to Auntie Wang, "If he returns, just tell him a lion is dead." I returned to the thatched hut by the stream. This was the home Zhao Rin and I had built with our own hands. I skillfully lit a fire in the stove. The dry grass burned quickly, and in an instant, the house was reduced to ashes. Then, shouldering my medicine box and a small bundle, with a bamboo basket looped over my arm, I set off south at a steady pace. A little over 2 weeks ago, a noble lady had arrived in our small village of Mang. The moment she saw Zhao Rin, her eyes reddened. "Brother Rin, for 3 years I've had no word from you. Do you have any idea what I've been through?" Zhao Rin placed his hoe back where it belonged. "Don't cry," he soothed. "The wind is strong out here, come inside." Then he instructed me, "Lion, please trouble yourself to brew a bowl of ginger tea." I squatted before the stove, waving a small cattail fan distractedly. My ears were tuned to the conversation next door. "That woman caused the death of my son, yet he wants to make her a consort." The handmaid chimed in, "Ever since the general left, Your Highness the Crown Princess has suffered so many grievances." Zhao Rin's voice was cold. How dare he, Song Zhen? I carried the steaming ginger tea into the room. The handmaid wiped a drop of water from the rim of the bowl. Her voice dripped with disgust. "Who knows if this is even clean?" The crown princess took the bowl, chiding her. "What would a country servant know? Don't make things difficult for Brother Rin." My face flushed with anger, and I looked to Zhao Rin. He said calmly, "Junmei, this is my wife, a lion." Her eyes flew open in astonishment. The ginger tea in her hands tilted, spilling all over the floor. The handmaid exclaimed, "The general married a woman like this." Zhao Rin's expression was unreadable. He said to me, "A lion, please bring another bowl." The shock and contempt in their eyes rooted my feet to the spot. "No," I mumbled. Zhao Rin's voice grew heavier. "A lion." I whispered, "At the very least, they should apologize." The handmaid let out a soft laugh. The crown princess interrupted gently. "It's all right. I can't stand the taste of ginger tea anyway. You know that, Brother Rin. Don't make things hard on me." Her intimate tone softened Zhao Rin's gaze. He shook his head in resignation. "You never take care of yourself." My lips parted, but it felt as if any word I spoke would be ill-timed. So I remained silent. That night, Zhao Rin complained that I had been rude during the day. She traveled all this way and didn't even get a bowl of hot tea. A lion, Junmei, is my cousin. She's been spoiled since childhood and has a very simple nature, which is why she offends people easily. Besides, it was my oversight. I didn't introduce you to her first, which led to the misunderstanding. Though Zhao Rin was usually stern, he rarely lost his temper. This time, he was so angry he took his blanket and slept on the floor. One on the bed, one on the ground, he became the wronged party. I began to wonder if I was being too sensitive. In the middle of the night, I pulled him up and admitted I was wrong. He sighed and stood up. He held me and teased, "A lion is so petty. The magnolia that made you sprain your ankle had to be dug up. The husband who made you unhappy has to roll around on the cold floor before you'll yield." That wasn't it at all. When he went out today, He hadn't dug up the magnolia he'd promised me, and I only apologized to coax him because I was afraid he'd catch a cold on the floor. Your Highness, I've investigated. The general never registered a marriage certificate here. The handmaid's voice was scornful. She's just a country girl with no official standing. My hands sorting herbs paused. In the room, Liu Junmei's voice was faint. He told me he would never marry another. The herb rack crashed to the floor. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly knelt to pick up the scattered herbs. I remembered our wedding. We hadn't bought a wedding dress or a red veil. It was the kind Auntie Wang who brought us a single red candle. That night, a pair of warm hands took mine. Zhao Rin's voice was deep. From now on, we will live a good life together. All these years, he hunted, I practiced medicine. Our life was simple but peaceful. I thought we were an ordinary married couple, but it turned out to be just my own wishful thinking. A wave of sadness washed over me. My master had only taught me to read and to recognize herbs. She had never taught me about these things. The dark clouds that had loomed for days finally burst into a downpour. I was miserably picking through the muddy herbs. Zhao Rin returned from his hunt and pulled me into the house. The rain is too heavy, leave them. I shook off his hand and stubbornly continued picking. General, please come quickly. Her Highness is unwell, the handmaid called from the doorway. Zhao Rin let go of my hand and hurried into the room. The rain that day was truly immense. I caught a chill and, with a dizzy head, brewed myself a soup to ward off the cold. Zhao Rin was in the other room, taking care of Liu Junmei. He came looking for me in a rush. She's having a heart episode. The usual prescription is missing Evodia fruit. Do you have any? I forced myself to think, then shook my head. There's none left. His brow furrowed with impatience. Then his eyes fixed on the dregs of herbs by the stove. His expression hardened. Then what is this? He asked, his face cold. It was the Evodia fruit from my cold-dispelling soup. Of course, Zhao Rin recognized it. He had no time to wonder why I needed the medicine. He was only disappointed. A lion? I never thought you were such a vengeful person. My voice was stuffy from my blocked nose. It's not like that. Zhao Rin turned and left, rushing back out into the pouring rain to find medicine for Liu Junmei. When I went to check on Liu Junmei, I overheard their conversation. The general still cares for you, Your Highness. He can't bear to see you cry or suffer. The moment you fall ill, he loses all composure. Liu Junmei's voice was melancholic. Brother Zhao Rin is a very good person. The handmaid smiled. Back then, for your sake, he relinquished command of 200,000 troops in the throne hall, all to secure you the position of crown princess. Everyone saw how deeply he felt for you. Liu Junmei sighed without speaking. The handmaid comforted her. As long as you ask, he will surely return to the capital with us and seek justice for you. A gust of night wind blew, and my muddled head suddenly cleared. In the distance, Zhao Rin, wearing a straw raincoat and carrying a faint oil lamp, was hurrying back. I stood in the doorway and said softly, "Husband, my head hurts, my chest hurts. I feel very unwell." Raindrops dripped from the eaves, soaking my shoulders. Zhao Rin took off his raincoat and produced a medicine pouch from his robes, clean and untouched by a single drop of rain. He lowered his eyes, his voice chillingly thin. "Are you done with your tantrum?" The bitter taste of medicine lingered on my tongue. My stuffy nose made it hard to breathe. I opened my mouth slightly, only to have it filled with a gust of cold wind, triggering a violent coughing fit. Zhao Rin didn't pause, walking past me into the house. The next day, Liu Junmei was feeling much better. I was wrapped in a thick quilt, still in bed long after the sun was high, having not made breakfast. Zhao Rin stood a few steps away, his voice cold. "If you're going to be as jealous and petty as a common village woman, then there's no need for you to come to the capital." My stomach rumbled. I got up and cooked 2 bowls of congee. Zhao Rin's expression softened slightly. After one sip, he looked so wretched he seemed about to vomit up the acid in his stomach. "Why is it bitter?" I slowly sipped my sweet, warm sweet potato congee. I added Coptese powder. Of course it's bitter, I thought. His face turned ashen. "You will stay home and reflect on your behavior, lest you go out and make a fool of yourself." I lowered my eyes. As I waited for my half-eaten bowl of congee to grow cold, I finally understood. In his heart, a lion was just a petty, vengeful, unpresentable country girl. I had wanted to say that the bitterness in my heart was just like the Coptese he had tasted. When Zhao Rin left, he didn't even want to see me. He just said through the door, "Wait for me." I gently tapped the straw mat beneath me. Zhao Rin had gathered the dried grass, and I had woven it with my own hands. Everything in this home was something we had built together. The square table and low stools in the room, the wicker baskets and wooden herb rack in the yard, the swing and the small shed by the medicine patch. All these things that had once brought me joy suddenly felt tasteless. Perhaps it was time for me to leave, too. The town ferry was bustling with people. A familiar vendor called out, "Mistress A. Lion, heading north to find your husband." Many people knew that Zhao Rin had left on a luxurious passenger boat that day. I shook my head. Which boat goes south? My master had mentioned before her death that her hometown was in the watery region of the south. I was an orphan with no home, so I had decided to make her home my own. The vendor chuckled. "Having a spat with your husband? Brother Zhao is so good to you, he always buys malt candy from me for you." I pressed my lips together and didn't answer. His eyes darted around. While sorting his goods, he hailed me onto a boat that was about to depart. "Quick, quick, this one's heading south. I'm going too." I scrambled aboard in a hurry. All my saved silver went to the boat fare, and the vegetable buns from Auntie Wang were my rations. When I reached the bottom of the buns, I found 5 eggs hidden in the basket. The eggs were soon gone. The vendor disembarked with me. He said earnestly, "Brother Zhao works hard out there to give you a better life. When you quarrel across such a great distance, your hearts will only grow further apart. Men always have it harder. Mistress A. Lion, you should be more understanding." With that, he slipped into the crowd as nimbly as a fish. I looked up and saw a tall city gate. Sigh, that meddlesome vendor. He had brought me to the capital. I counted and recounted the copper coins in my pocket. Finally, I found a job at an apothecary. After 7 days of grinding herbs, the shopkeeper threw me out, bag and baggage. "Your skills are terrible. You've ruined good medicinal ingredients." "What? You want to be paid? It's merciful of me not to make you pay for the herbs." I was ridiculed at the doorstep, but the most meticulous physician in the shop had praised my herb preparation. At the same time, 2 women were being driven out by the physician. "Look at your station in life. You want medical treatment? Aren't you afraid of dirtying someone's hands?" One of the women, who had looked pitiful a moment before, instantly adopted a seductive demeanor. "Oh, that's not what you said last night, sir. You praised my slender waist and soft hands. You even said you could only sleep soundly while holding my feet." The old physician, well past 50, sputtered with rage. "You're lying, slander. Women of your background have no sense of propriety or shame." She snorted. Her eyes met the leering gazes of the passers-by without flinching. After the crowd dispersed, she dropped her imperious act. She gently supported the pale-faced woman beside her, comforting her. "It's all right. The capital is a big place. I refuse to believe we can't find someone willing to treat you." I approached with my small medicine box and asked softly, "Perhaps I could try." Prostitutes were considered unclean. No one would treat them. I became the physician of the Pingchun brothel. The sisters here were beautiful and spoke sweetly. They didn't mind that I consulted my medical books while diagnosing them. Instead, they would massage my shoulders, feed me fruit, and ask if I was tired. When I left Mang Village, the grapevines had just begun to climb their trellis. Now, heavy snow bent the branches in the capital. Someone was chatting idly. "Now that General Zhao has returned victorious, I wonder what reward he'll seek for the crown princess this time. A guest from the Ministry of Rights was here the other day. He said the general didn't even go to the palace to receive his reward. He was in a hurry to go back to his hometown to find his wife." At the same time, a young master from a wealthy family, his hair tied with a jade clasp but his hand clutching 3 worn copper coins, arrived at Pingchun brothel. He smiled the moment he saw me. "My lady, I've finally found you." I felt a headache coming on. Hong Rui had told me that young Master Su was a famous charlatan. He wouldn't even decide which foot to step out of the house, without tossing his coins for a divination. That day, I was gathering herbs on South Mountain outside the city and had caught a hibernating medicinal snake with my bare hands. I had startled Su Ryujiu, who was climbing the mountain. He hastily squatted down, picking up the copper coins by my feet. He muttered, "Zun for wind, a withered tree finding spring, a most auspicious sign." Then he looked up, his gaze burning into me. "My lady," he said enthusiastically. The city folk were so strange. Terrified, I grabbed the snake and ran down the mountain. I never expected this mad mystic to find his way to Pingchun brothel. He looked utterly serious, his eyes shining. Before I left the house that day, I fasted and bathed for 3 days, knelt before my ancestral tablets for 2 hours, then washed my hands and devoutly cast the hexagram. The hexagram told me to ask the spring wind, "You were the first woman I saw, You are my fated wife. Looking at the mystic young master, I asked humbly, does your line of work pay well? No result, no fee. I don't cheat the old or the young, he replied. So how much silver have you earned? I asked again. Ryujiu looked at the sky, then at the ground. Finally, he declared righteously, to speak of money is too vulgar. I regretfully withdrew my gaze. I rejected him earnestly. You've miscalculated. Pointing to the fine snow under the eaves, I smiled. It's clearly the dead of winter. Where would you find a spring wind to ask? This foolish young master couldn't even tell a convincing lie. No wonder he couldn't make any money. Ryujiu shook his head, adamant. Impossible. You are fated to have only one marriage, and it is with me. He came to Pingchun brothel every day, from when the snow covered South Mountain, to when the carp leaped through the breaking ice, and spring began to peek through the cracks. By the willow-lined embankment on the city's outskirts. I said to him, spring is here. When the wind picks up, cast another divination. And please, stop coming to see me. Ryujiu tossed his copper coins up and down without answering. A familiar voice called out, "A lion." It was Zhao Rin. He rushed over and grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight it felt like he would crush it. His eyes were filled with grief and anger. "A lion? You have deceived me so cruelly." Zhao Rin said I was too heartless. After returning to the capital with the crown princess, he was immediately ordered on a military campaign. He was used to army life, but on this campaign, he couldn't eat or sleep well. He was always thinking of me. As soon as the war ended, he didn't even return to the capital, heading straight for Mang village. But what he heard was the news of my death. The shock and grief made him fall ill. It was Auntie Wang who, unable to bear it, told him the truth. He went south to look for me, searching for months without a trace. He never expected to find me upon his return to the capital. He was thinner, a shadow of sorrow between his brows. He was both shocked and overjoyed to see me, but his first words were a complaint. Your temper is far too great. I was merely cold to you when I left, and you retaliate like this. You are a general's wife. What lady in the capital would demand her husband to grovel and beg for forgiveness like you do? Only I could put up with a temper like yours. Ryujiu brushed his hand away. You're hurting her, he said with a frown. Zhao Rin's gaze hardened as he questioned me. Who is he? I gently rubbed my sore wrist and thought for a moment. First, I said to Ryujiu, see, I told you you miscalculated. I've been married before. I can't be your wife. Then, to Zhao Rin, I said, you're right, I have a big temper. And a husband like you, I no longer want. Zhao Rin's eyelids trembled. Then he looked up and let out a short, cold laugh. I've spoiled you too much. His words carried a chill I had never heard before. Zhao Rin investigated my every move in the capital. That night, he came to Pingchun brothel. He requested Hong Rui by name and made her sing all night without a sip of water. The next day, he requested Chi Luo and made her play the zither all night without a rest. I brewed a soothing pinealia soup for Hong Rui's throat, and I applied medicine to Chi Luo's swollen hands. Hong Rui said in a hoarse voice, I don't know what's gotten into this nobleman. I felt terribly guilty. Hong Rui, grateful that I had treated Chi Luo, had once stood outside the apothecary for a whole day to get my 7 days' wages back for me. In this brothel, the two of them were my closest friends. Zhao Rin was doing this to target me. When I went to find Zhao Rin in his private room, he was sitting upright in a chair. What exactly do you want? I asked. He was calm and composed, taking a light sip of tea. A lion, you are my wife. Spending your days in a sordid place like Pingchun brothel, consorting with prostitutes, what does that look like? You come from the countryside. I should have taught you the rules of the capital long ago. I suppressed the rage in my chest. Who is your wife? I asked calmly. Zhao Rin, did you ever give me a marriage certificate? A flicker of panic crossed his face. He spoke slowly. That matter was my oversight. Then he added confidently, besides me, who else could you marry? That suffocating feeling, like being drenched in rain, washed over me again. The grievances that had tormented me through sleepless nights could no longer be contained. I shouted, your oversight, or was I simply not worth your effort? In your heart, I'm an unruly country girl. You are the great general. You were willing to marry me, so I should be grateful. I wasn't worthy of the proper betrothal gifts and wedding rituals, nor a wedding dress and red silk, and certainly not a piece of paper to prove our marriage. But Zhao Rin, why? Even the poorest families in the village, when they married, would scrimp and save to buy a piece of red cloth for good fortune. But when we married, all we had was that single red candle from Auntie Wang. She had sighed, from now on, a lion has a home. No one will dare bully you again. I couldn't stop my eyes from turning red. My voice dropped. You're only bullying me like this because you know I'm a helpless orphan. Zhao Rin froze, at a loss for what to do. It's not like that, he explained. You've always been so pure, so different from others. I thought you wouldn't care for such worldly customs. Besides, if you were unhappy, you should have told me sooner. No one had ever taught me, and my master had died too soon. Zhao Rin lowered his head and took a wooden hairpin from his robes, offering it to me. I carved this myself, he said earnestly. When I went to war before, I never cared about life or death. But this time, I cherished my life because I thought of you waiting for me at home. A lion, I don't know when it happened, but you've become more important to me than I ever imagined. I fiercely wiped the tears from my eyes. I snapped the wooden hairpin in two and threw it at his feet, meeting his stunned and hurt expression. I delivered my ultimatum. Don't ever come to Pingchen brothel again, or I'll set a venomous snake on you. That was how I had driven away the village bully before. But Zhao Rin was worse than any bully. He led his men and raided the brothel. The women of the house lost their livelihood, and panic spread. Hong Rui and Qi Luo were also filled with sorrow. Overwhelmed with guilt, I gave them all the silver I had. When Hong Rui heard my story, she comforted me instead. We've always been like drifting duckweed. There are a dozen brothels in Pingchen. If not here, we can go anywhere. Her words made me feel even worse. I left Pingchen brothel soon after. I had a feeling that if I stayed, I would only bring them more trouble. Once again, I had nowhere to go, except for Zhao Rin's general's manor. He sent a servant with a message. Madam, the general is waiting for you at home. I squatted by the riverbank, cursing Zhao Rin while trying to figure out how to earn money. Maybe I could go to South Mountain first, gather some herbs, and trade them for a couple of buns. People were murmuring, he's here again. How many days has it been? He stays there from morning till night. He'll catch a cold. Youth these days. I followed their gaze and saw Su Ryuju standing on the embankment, staring blankly at the willow branches. What are you doing here? Without turning his head, he answered, waiting for the spring wind. Then he turned back in surprise. A lion. The willow branches had long since sprouted new buds. The spring wind had blown over countless mountains. A breeze picked up. Su Ryuju tossed the copper coins in his hand. They spun on the ground for a few circles before stopping. He tossed them 6 times in a row. He squatted down and studied them for a long while. This time it's finally right, he exclaimed with joy. The embankment was lush with green, and the cicadas were about to begin their song. Spring was almost over. It seemed he had waited for many winds to get this one divination. He was so happy that he fainted. I carried Su Ryuju home. His lips were pale, his cheeks flushed. It was clear he had caught a chill. Before the Su manor, the ground was paved with white jade, the plaque inlaid with gold. I said awkwardly to Su's elders, I'm a physician, I can treat him, considering Su Ryuju and I were acquaintances. I hesitated. It's not expensive, 10 copper coins will do. A middle-aged man who bore a strong resemblance to him had a grim expression. My heart panicked. Though I didn't want to admit it, his illness was undeniably related to me. And now here I was, demanding a consultation fee at his doorstep. It would be reasonable for them to blame me. But for the sake of a full stomach, I gritted my teeth. 5 will also work. A beautiful woman, adorned with jewels and hairpins, bustled in. She looked at me curiously. I heard my daughter-in-law has arrived. She took my hand and smiled. Oh, let me have a look. Su's father cleared his throat. Don't frighten her. He ordered, someone take the young mistress to rest. My face was wooden. The city folk were truly strange. After Su Ryuju woke up, he was soon back to his lively self. His mother praised his good taste in finding such a fine wife. His father instructed him to offer more incense to their ancestors. Apparently, the Su family truly had an immortal in their ancestry, so they were accustomed to Su Ryuju's mystical ways, even if 9 out of 10 of his divinations were wrong. I spoke up weakly. Well then, I'll be taking my leave. 3 pairs of bright eyes stared at me in unison. Just then, a servant came to report. Her Majesty, the Empress, has heard that Miss A. Lion has arrived and wishes to see her. It turned out the current Empress was Su Ryuju's older sister. I began to worry. Surely the Empress would be a normal person. On the day I went to the palace, I saw Zhao Rin's figure on the palace path. The imperial guards at the gate were chatting. General Zhao has finally entered the palace. His Majesty has been worrying about what reward to bestow upon him. I heard the crown princess left the general's manor in tears yesterday. They exchanged knowing glances. Our general. A palace maid led Su Ryuju and me into the hall. He said casually, "Don't be afraid, my sister is very nice." But after we paid our respects, the empress on the throne said with a stern face, "Nonsense." I felt a sense of relief. She scolded, "It's one thing for mother and father to be thoughtless, but you take a wife without even observing the proper betrothal rites or holding a banquet. To have her move into the house so hastily, isn't that a great injustice to a lion?" Su Ryuju hung his head in shame, humbly admitting his fault. Sister is right. My heart caught in my throat again and again. They really believed in a wife divined by tossing copper coins. I was in a daze. Amidst the discussion of auspicious dates for the wedding, I managed to speak up. I don't think I agreed to marry him." The air fell silent. I could clearly hear the empress take a deep breath. She asked Su Ryuju in disbelief, "You haven't even proposed." The sound of palace attendants bowing filled the air. The emperor strode in, his tone light. "Empress, come and see. Our General Zhao truly dotes on his country wife. He refused all rewards and only asked me for a phoenix crown and wedding robes. He said he wronged her during their wedding and wants to welcome her again with a grand procession, and he has asked me to officiate." The empress smiled. "Today is truly a day of double happiness." She introduced me. "This is my younger brother's beloved." Zhao Rin followed behind the emperor. When he saw me, he was stunned. A lion. His loss of composure plunged everyone present into silence. Finally, the emperor let out a dry laugh. Ha. After some deliberation, the emperor said, "No marriage certificate has been written. That makes things simple. A lion, which of these two do you choose?" I knelt on the floor, thinking long and hard. I chose neither. The faces of the emperor and empress darkened. The atmosphere in the hall was terrifyingly quiet. Zhao Rin moved and spoke. "A lion comes from the countryside and does not know the might of the heavens. I will be sure to discipline her properly. I beg your majesty's forgiveness." Su Ryuju said earnestly, "I truly love a lion and do not wish to put her in a difficult position." In the end, because the empress was feeling unwell, the audience was hastily dismissed after I checked her pulse. Before we left, the empress pulled Su Ryuju aside and whispered to him for a long time. As we departed, Su Ryuju was distracted. We left the palace gates with Zhao Rin. The moment Liu Junmei saw Zhao Rin, she rushed to him. "Brother Rin, what did the emperor say? Did he issue an edict to punish that wretch?" Zhao Rin was silent. A palace maid came and whispered in her ear. Her face changed. She pointed at me and said to Zhao Rin, "You didn't even do what you promised me, all for her." Zhao Rin frowned and sighed. "Junmei, she did not cause your child's death. And as the crown prince, it's normal for him to have wives and concubines. You should have understood that when you married him. Besides, I never promised you anything. My obedience to you all these years has been to repay the kindness of my aunt and uncle." Liu Junmei's eyes filled with tears. "But you clearly said you would never let me suffer the slightest grievance. If you hadn't been missing and presumed dead on the battlefield, I would never have married the crown prince." Zhao Rin's face was stern, his tone severe. "Watch your words." He then glanced cautiously at me. "A lion, don't misunderstand." Liu Junmei's voice was shrill as she broke down. "She's just a lowly country girl. How could you treat me like this for her sake?" At some point, Su Ryuju, who had been squatting on the ground tossing his coins, stood up and dusted himself off. He shook his head at Liu Junmei. "You're in for some terrible luck." In the carriage, Su Ryuju and I sat opposite each other. The wheels rumbled over the stone slabs. By the sound of it, we were approaching the bustling market. I broke the silence. "You can let me off here." His features were handsome, but his expression was dejected. "A lion, do you think I'm crazy?" he asked. My hand, about to lift the curtain, paused. For the first time, I looked at this mystic young master seriously. He furrowed his fine brows, his eyes troubled. I remembered how every time he came to Pingchun brothel, he never gave the beautiful women a second glance. Someone once deliberately threw a handkerchief at him. He didn't flirt, nor did he scorn her. Instead, he picked it up and returned it to her with an open heart. All the patrons of the brothel knew of the famous young Master Su. They laughed at his madness and foolishness. He never got angry. He would simply walk up to them and toss his coins for a divination. If it was auspicious, he would offer a few words of good fortune. Eventually, the person would feel embarrassed and give him money for the good omen. When Hong Rui and Qi Luo deliberately teased him, he would earnestly perform a divination for them too. I shook my head. "You're not foolish." His eyes, like dim stars, were instantly lit. "I'm not too sad that you didn't choose me," he said. He nodded affirmatively. Really? I won't force you. But can you wait? Wait until I become better and then take another look at me. I was taken aback. I thought that apart from the initial shock of him calling me his wife for a few days, there was nothing really wrong with him. But I still got out of the carriage. Walking on the street, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Why did I have to choose? My 3 years of marriage with Zhao Rin had made me fearful of the whole affair. I feared that the initial joy would turn into endless blame and complaint. I feared that the person I shared a bed with would wake up one day a different person. I feared misjudging someone from the start and having to swallow all the bitterness. It was like the patrons who came to Pingchun brothel. Many were court officials with virtuous wives at home, usually dignified and polite. But in secret, they unleashed their debauchery and cruelty on the prostitutes. When I first saw Chi Luo, her whip marks were festering, her wax burns ulcerated. There wasn't a single patch of good skin on her body. And Hong Rui, who was swindled out of her buyout money by a poor scholar who prided himself on his integrity. She watched him pass the imperial exams, marry a beautiful wife, and then he returned as her patron, subjecting her to endless humiliation. And Zhao Rin, he had always been responsible and dependable, but his responsibility was entirely for Liu Junmei. Su Ruojiu seemed very good, but I was scared. Before I left the palace, the empress had rewarded me with gold and silver as a consultation fee. Holding the heavy silver, it all felt unreal. I took most of it to Pingchun brothel and gave it to Hong Rui and Chi Luo. If you can find the other sisters from the brothel, please apologize for me, I said. Whether they bought their freedom or opened their own brothel, it would be better than living at the mercy of others. I thought about the past. Zhao Rin always said the world was treacherous, and that living peacefully in Mang Village was the greatest happiness. But it was only after leaving Mang Village that I discovered, though there was the black-hearted apothecary owner, there was also the lively laughter of Pingchun brothel. They were all very good people, just that their fates were a little bitter. I was often ashamed of this pity I felt. Hong Rui once laughed so hard she swayed, calling me a saint. I could barely feed myself, yet I worried about them, with their unspeakable injuries and illnesses, selling smiles by the window. Now Hong Rui, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, took the box of gold and silver without ceremony. Then we're even, she said briskly. You don't need to come here anymore. Her tone was harsh, her face a mask of indifference I had never seen before. Chi Luo stood by, wanting to say something but ultimately turning her back. I stood there stunned. Treading on the withered leaves in the mud, I left Pingchun brothel. Perhaps because I was used to being poor, having too much silver made me uneasy. The empress was truly generous. Even after giving a share to Pingchun brothel, I still had a huge sum of 100 taels. I was afraid of being robbed all day, checking it 3 or 5 times at night, unable to sleep peacefully. A month later, I used the remaining silver to open a small apothecary in the south of the city. I took in 2 orphan girls to help. When Zhao Rin came, I was tending to the small medicine patch in the backyard. He stood to the side, watching for a long time. Then he picked up a tool and started working alongside me. It felt just like the old days. "A lion, I was wrong," Zhao Rin said in a low voice. "I shouldn't have let you suffer such grievances. I always ignored your feelings, never treated you as a real wife." He seemed sincere, but I was calm. "It was because I wanted a home so badly back then that I was with you," I said truthfully. He shook his head, speaking as if to himself. "When you married me, you said you loved me. How could you marry another? It would be more accurate to say that I wanted a home, and so I came to love him. After I burned that home to the ground, there was nothing left." Seeing my silence, Zhao Rin grew anxious. He reminisced, "We were so happy in Mang Village. When I came home late from hunting, you would warm my food. When I was injured, you never left my side. When I went to town for salt and oil, you'd remind me to be frugal so we could save for a bigger house." His voice choked up as he continued. "We were clearly making our lives better and better." I nodded in agreement. "I was very good to you." The unspoken words made Zhao Rin lower his head, in silence for a long while. He mumbled, "Every time the vendor came, I bought you malt candy." I recalled, the malt candy gave me a toothache, and I had to brew copties for myself. But I was afraid of wasting it, and you had bought it especially for me, so I always finished it. But Zhao Rin, I don't even like sweets. The one who loved malt candy was Liu Junmei, who used to follow him around. Zhao Rin's face turned pale, and he couldn't say another word. I continued, "I was also at fault for not telling you directly. But your kindness to me was so rare, I was afraid that if I spoke up, even that little bit would disappear. Like that magnolia tree that made me sprain my ankle. I wanted you to dig it up not to vent my anger, but to remind myself that whenever I saw a magnolia in the yard, I could remember your kindness to me and feel that life was still worth living. Zhao Rin's eyes reddened. "A lion, I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling, but I let out a long sigh of relief. It was as if I were saying goodbye to my past, conflicted self. "You should go back," I said earnestly. I heard that Zhao Rin fell ill after returning home. He recuperated for several months. The first thing he did after recovering was to transplant many magnolia trees into the backyard of the general's manor. But it was winter. They couldn't bloom, and it was a struggle for them to even survive. Business at the apothecary was slow. When people saw that the physician was a woman, they would shake their heads and leave. Then one day, for 4 or 5 days in a row, many female customers suddenly appeared. I was so busy, I couldn't catch my breath. Listening to their conversations, I found it strange. So I found a spare moment and went to the city god temple they mentioned. A cloth banner hung at a small stall in front of the temple. It read, "Divination and fortune-telling, no charge." Su Ryujiu sat at the stall, dressed in a mink fur coat. The fluffy white fur around his neck made his face look as handsome as jade. A long line of women waited before his stall. When he encountered an unmarried woman, he would say a few auspicious words, then add, "Worries weigh on the mind and harm the spirit. You might visit the Susan Hall in the south of the city to see a physician. Your future will surely be smooth." When he encountered a married woman, he would first shake his head and sigh, then say, "You are fated to have 3 sons, but alas, I hear there is a miraculous physician at Susan Hall. You should go and see." I watched him from the tea house opposite. He sat there for the entire day. As the sky darkened and the tea house staff began to close up, Su Ryujiu also stood up and slowly packed his things. I walked over to him under an umbrella, through the fine snow. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "A lion." I kept a straight face. "You shouldn't deceive people, it's not right." He was taken aback. "I'm not deceiving anyone," he explained. "I interpret the hexagrams as they are." He added in a low voice, "I just added a little of my own selfish hope." Snowflakes drifted into his eyes. He blinked hard in discomfort, but kept his gaze fixed on me. His stare made my head feel hot. I lowered my head, seeing that his hands were red and swollen. The fool didn't even realize he had frostbite. I took him back to Susan Hall and drew a basin of warm water. I placed his hands in it. "Frostbite is not to be taken lightly," I said. "Especially at night, it can be so uncomfortable you can't sleep." "I can't sleep well now," he said. Su Ryujiu looked up at me, his expression serious. "You're always running around in my mind." Meeting his clear eyes, my heart pounded. His gaze made me feel shy. So, I deliberately splashed the water from my hands onto his face. "Don't look," I said fiercely. "And don't think." When the northern tribes grew restless, Zhao Rin, his body barely recovered, volunteered to go to the border. He vowed not to return until he was victorious. The night before he left, he stood outside the apothecary all night. I did not see him. The battle was fierce, and he won only with great effort. But due to his chronic illness, he collapsed in the heavy snow on his way back to the capital. His last request to the emperor was to have magnolia trees planted on both banks of the moat in the south of the city. No one knew what it meant. The emperor did not neglect his final wish, even ordering magnolias to be planted at every post station on the route back to the capital. To welcome the general's soul home, I watched as the willow trees nearby were removed. A few laborers chatted. With General Zhao gone, the crown prince immediately divorced the crown princess. How pitiful. I say she brought it on herself. What man can tolerate a fickle woman? You don't know, do you? The crown princess and General Zhao had a secret affair long ago. The crown prince only endured it for the sake of the country. The blue cloth curtain at the door was lifted. A customer had arrived. I focused on my work. 2 years later, the apothecary business stabilized. I hired a widowed female physician to run it. I packed my bags, took some silver and left. The year I left Mang Village, I felt that though the world was vast, there was no place for me. So I had to make my master's home my own. But my master was a traveling physician. I should be like her, traveling the lands, seeing difficult cases and saving lives. I just missed her too much, wanted a home too much. I wanted to escape the gossip, orphan, bastard, outsider. That's why I nodded when Zhao Rin asked me to marry him, to accompany him into retirement, to live in seclusion in the mountains. But I should have come out to see the world sooner. The world is so vast, where can I not make my home? Even if the road ahead is yellow sand, strong winds, and the sound of hoofbeats behind me. I turned around. I saw Suruju on a donkey, calling, "A lion." I stood still, watching him get closer. He dismounted clumsily, panting, "Wait for me." I thought for a moment and asked, "How did you know which way I was going?" After all, even I had no direction. Suruju tossed his copper coins and smiled at me. "The woman you met on South Mountain back then, if it had been someone else, would you have made her your wife too?" He answered without hesitation, "Of course not." So, was his divination accurate or not? Did he himself believe in it or not? I was momentarily confused. I decided not to think about it and traveled with him. The sun was just rising. As we walked, I asked, "What did the Empress whisper to you back then? Did she scold you for bringing shame on her by finding a woman like me?" He walked beside me, leading the donkey. He said slowly, My sister." Oh, just the usual advice about striking while the iron is hot, taking advantage of the situation, having 2 children in 3 years, that sort of thing. He tilted his head, his laughter clear and bright. "I've divined it. We're fated to have a daughter." Meh. "And if you leave, what about your parents?" "We'll wait 2 years, then bring their granddaughter back to appease them."